Welcome to Giants Nation. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, and today we have Patricia Traina of Sports Illustrated on talking about the Giants' final open OTA practice to the media before they kick off mandatory minicamp next week. So we talked about, Jaxson Dart, how his day was, Deonte Banks maybe in a little bit of a position battle and some other things that we went through. But I also want to give some of my thoughts on, what some of the things Darius Slayton said, including Jalin Hyatt's weight. I want to talk about that viral clip of Kayvon Burns and Abdul Carter on the field and them all getting to the quarterback at once. And some of my thoughts on that. But first, before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by some special people who are keeping this channel alive. We got Uncle Thunder. I bet you're pretty, actually, no, you're pretty sad because your team's down 2-1 in the NBA Finals. We got Kyle Williams, who he's pretty happy because he got drafted by the Patriots. Hopefully he has a nice connection with, Drake May and could get some, playing time. We got Nicholas Tesorio. Yeah, I think I got that right. Tesorio. He likes the Oreos. And then Greg Reeves. That's actually Dan Reeves' nephew, if you didn't know. These people went to patreon.com/Giants Nation. I know I did a bad job of promoting it, but it really is what makes this show go. We obviously got that first big bump when I, started all this. And then obviously some of that, you're going to lose some of that, after, a couple months. But if you want to support it, it really helps us out. I got a t-shirt contest that we just finished up. So we do those, every month. And there's some other cool stuff on there. So it's mostly just a way to keep this show alive. So patreon.com/Giants Nation. Appreciate if you do the $10 a month tier, but you do have the $6 tier there as well too. So I want to talk about Jalin Hyatt, because Darius Slayton said that Jalin Hyatt has put on 15 to 20 pounds, which, be honest, I don't believe, but I do think he's, doing his best to put on weight. And Jalin Hyatt has had some, highlight clips get posted out of OTAs. He had a tweet about holding grudges and never forgetting, which has now been deleted when I went to go look to see exactly what it said. And you can call me a little bit of a Debbie Downer, but I'm just not really buying any of this stuff with Jalin Hyatt. For one, he needs 2 wide receivers to get hurt in Malik Nabers and Darius Slayton for him to get the usage that will get him consistent targets in the NFL, because we've seen that him being the second outside wide receiver doesn't get him those targets. And if they're there, they're very minimal. In fact, look, he's put on weight, he's putting in work, he's more bought in. Well, Research Rick posted a clip of wide receiver coach Mike Groh being interviewed in OTAs last year, where he said, "Oh my gosh, the growth is tremendous. I mean, he's just a different guy. He's gotten stronger. He's gained weight." So I know that they have to say those things, but then there was like a quote from Brian Dable about how he's gotten so much better in every area of the game, and then you go and watch the press conference. Because you want to see, what did he say about Jalin Hyatt? Because the tweet says Hyatt has improved in all facets. Well, the full clip is the reporters begging Brian Dable to say something specific on Hyatt, because Hyatt's kind of like the player of OTAs outside of Jaxson Dart. And he's like, what was the focus for him getting better? He's like, I'm not going to get into any of the details. And then the next reporter's like, well, what have you seen him improve? And he said, well, just really all facets of being a receiver, and need him to continue to do that in training. It was like a typical Brian Dable nothing answer. But the pictures from him coming out of OTA, I mean, he looks just as skinny as last year. I still don't think just adding weight it would help with him, but I don't think it fixes Jalin Hyatt's issues, right? It's not just, oh man, if he was 15 pounds heavier, he'd be this better receiver. Like, his issues are he can't release well. Now, strength can help with that, but it's not everything. Like, he doesn't get in and out of cuts well. Him being skinny doesn't make him a lesser route runner. If anything, it would help you in that, making those cuts down the field, where weight could actually just make that part worse. And he's having a great OTAs. Well, I mean, is he? Like the beat reporters have been there for 3 practices. There was nothing that came out of this third one. Well, the first one was like, Jaxson Dart connected with Jalin Hyatt for a touchdown. And then you see the clip, it's like, oh, that's fine, but that's not like that's just kind of like him being wide open versus, a zone that, Dart threw the ball over. It was a good play by Dart, but it wasn't anything crazy. And then they're going to show, their drills of him winning deep, because that's what Jalin Hyatt can do. And I will say this for Jalin Hyatt, I don't think he's going to have 8 catches for 62 yards this year. I think he's going to have 200 plus, because again, Russell Wilson fits him perfectly. Like there's no quarterback in the NFL who benefits and Jalin Hyatt more than Russell Wilson, who's been even when Russell Wilson had his bad years in Denver, was top 5 in throw rate deep, and then top 5 in completion rate throwing it deep basically every single year. Like he's probably the most consistent deep ball thrower in usage and completion rate in the NFL. So like it does fit him well. But like you see as many, if not more, clips of connecting with Darius Slayton in compete drills. And last year they tried to force Hyatt to win, and they're not going to throw away the investment they made into Slayton last year. And then once Neighbors comes back in, then Jalin Hyatt's just another backup. Now again, I want to see him growth as a player, but I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm not really buying in this. Like, Jalin Hyatt is back. Like, this is going to be the breakout year. He was being held back because of a quarterback play. Quarterback play certainly did not help him, but it didn't make him one of the best 3 receivers on the team last year. And it didn't make him, have something better than just being able to win deep. We talk about quarterback, play, like, with Tyrod Taylor, it's not like Jalin Hyatt looked great. Like, in fact, the guy who got the most out of Jalin Hyatt was Tommy DeVito. So it's just kind of is what it is. I think once we get the training camp, like Brian Dable said, is where we'll see. It's how is he fitting into the team? How does he look on a down by down basis? Not in a couple clips that the Giants post out. Here's where I'm not going to be a Debbie Downer. And I know people have tried to play this down a little bit, and I understand why, because it's a clip of, James Hudson and Aaron Stinney and Evan Neal being in with starters, and those guys aren't the starters. But I'm going to put the clip on the screen for the YouTube people right now. It's this clip that's went out there. Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau are lined up wide alignment. So you could tell this is like a third down in one of their team drills. Abdul Carter shared this on his Instagram story of practice clips. Deleted very soon after, where the Giants were probably like, hey, do not post practice clips. Because that's never really happened with the Giants, is no one's ever posted practice clips, where other teams will let their players do that type of stuff. But going from, if you're the quarterback going from left to right, you have Brian Burns out wide, Mike and McFadden standing up at the 3 technique. You have, I don't know what defensive tackle, but he was at a 2-eye, which is inside the right guard. Then you have Abdul Carter right inside of the right tackle, and then Kayvon wide. And the defense also had 3 safeties on the field, 2 deep, with Dane Belton down in man coverage on the tight end, who was flexed out, but still almost connected to the offensive line. And it's just, that is what Abdul Carter is going to bring this team. I'm tired of hearing, Abdul Carter at linebacker or QB spy. Screw that. Like, there'll be I want that to be very minimal in the Giants' usage of him, where when people talk about getting all 3 of those guys on the field, I never want to hear, oh, man, they put him at stack linebacker or they put him at QB spot. There'll be times when that's necessary. But again, it's about third down. That's when we're talking about getting all 3. That's to be the goal of the defense. Get the third down, because I think when this defense gets the third down, they will be able to win. They'll be able to play basic man coverage or basic zone coverage, and they'll be able to win with this pass rush, because you're going to get a one-on-one advantage somewhere. And this particular clip, again, you don't have to blitz to do this. What they do is just have to mess with the alignment and make them have to account for all these things pre-snap. Where on this particular clip, the defensive tackle who's lined up inside the right guard, he slants into the center, so he's taking John Michael Schmitz. Kayvon gets a chip from the tight end, but the tackle is responsible for him. So Abdul Carter gets a one-on-one with a guard, and I don't care if it's Aaron Stinney or Quentin Nelson. Like, I'm taking Abdul Carter in that matchup in a third down. I mean, I am. That's a matchup that he's going to win. It also makes Brian Burns get a one-on-one, unless they keep the running back in. This play, they didn't keep the running back in, so Brian Burns gets a one-on-one. He wins. And he's able to pin his ears back. Kayvon Thibodeau even won on this play, but again, I'm not talking about like these guys winning their one-on-ones. It's just more creating the one-on-ones for these guys, where it's going to create one-on-ones, or it's going to force you to keep 7 guys in protection, which on third down, if you have a 3-man route out there, that's not going to get you the first down more times than not. Like, it's just not going to be enough. You're going to need somebody to occupy these underneath defenders, and don't let them sag 8-10 yards off of the line of scrimmage in their coverage. So again, I didn't post it because everyone had posted it by the time I had saw it or seen it. But man, that was like that got me excited. And I've been saying, well, I just can't wait to watch Abdul Carter play for the New York Giants. And then particularly, and again, Dexter Lawrence wasn't even on the field for this, right? And he's like, quote Brian Burns, "We have a Dex." Like when you add him into the fold, like I'm legitimately excited to see this pass rush. Like I don't care who the defensive coordinator is, even if it was Gus Bradley, like I'd be pumped to go see this pass rush. So that clip got me fired up. Like, and it's not because it showed me anything new, but it's just seeing the thing I've been we've all been talking about since the Giants drafted Abdul Carter, or since before they drafted Abdul Carter, and when I was making the case for the Giants to draft Abdul Carter. Um, so I'm really excited for that. Some other quick notes I want to get at. We're doing a mailbag on Tuesday, so I don't want to do too many topics. But again, that clip had me legitimately excited, and I wanted to talk about the Jalin Hyatt thing too. Theo Johnson's the Giants in catches from Russell Wilson with 4. Made me go look at Pat Fryermuth's stats with Russell Wilson last year, where he had 52 catches and 470 yards in 11 games. I think we'd sign up for that with Theo Johnson on a 17 game rate, which is over 700 yards. And yeah, I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat. Some other stuff. Dylan Camry, the special team from the Raging Cajuns. He's been like in highlight videos and pictures galore. Brian Daboll announced officially that they will be doing joint practices with the Jets and only the Jets, so none with the Bills. So I guess there is some bad blood there, despite the Giants hiring Brandon Beane's son. So only with the Jets, one home, one away. I really hope they open those up to fans. Like, I joked about it with Jordan Renan, but like I did apply for credentials. Like but we have sponsorship behind us for these, for these training camp packages and stuff. And maybe I'm smelling myself a little too much, but I do feel like if the Giants weren't so old school and quite frankly assholes about this stuff, and we were covering whatever team, they'd be like, oh, those guys can come cover training camp, right? Like they're not going to do anything crazy, and like we are legitimate. But obviously they just deny that. Like they just deny, and you have the runner with Pat Hanlon last year where they their whole thing is, oh, we're not going to ever give you those again. It's like, okay, well then what am I supposed to do with here? It still aggravates me though, where it's like, man, what a bullshit move. It really is. What a bullshit move. They call a podcaster like, hey, that's what you talk about how, legitimate we are, is that their head of PR called a podcaster after they got their ass beat 35-14 about saying that GM should be fired. Saying we're never going to help you again. The help was getting us credentials for a joint practice in Detroit. Pain in the ass. But I hope those are open to fans because I love the joint practices like more than life itself. Duggan said that Deonte Banks and Cordell Flott are alternating snaps. I do kind of like to prove it to us, Deonte Banks, but I sure as hell hope that's not a competition that Cordell Flott wins outing, because then we got real issues if Deonte Banks can't even be a starting corner. Darius Slayton had another cool answer I like, talking about when he was asked about Russell Wilson and how he communicates clearly, and he gave an example of, a lot of times you go on these deep routes and you aren't actually part of the play for the most part. 9 times out of 10 you're not part of the play. You're just clearing space, and always goes to the underneath guy. But Russell Wilson will communicate to him in the snap like, hey, stay alert, because if that safety drives on this, because he knows what passing concept is, I'm going to throw that ball to you. So stay alert. So you're not just out there jogging the clear out route and not really, looking for the ball. So I thought that was a pretty cool. Again, that's, coming from Russell Wilson, who has the deep ball success like we talked about before. So we're going to get into this interview with Patricia Traina. Got some cool stuff coming up. I know we've been doing some interview stuff, but I finished my Jaxson Dart deep passing and third down series, which were pretty cool. I'm going to finish those individual game breakdowns. We got 4 left, but got some cool stuff planned out with Dart before camp, because once camp starts, all that stuff washes away. It's about, from here on. We have a mailbag next week, and Dan Duggan, wrapping up mini camp. We have the way too early draft week the following week. Then we have 4th of July mailbag. And then I usually take the week off after 4th of July, but don't take off from the shows, just pre-record them. We're gonna do a Jaxson Dart focus week. So I'm doing interviews with some like analysts from around the NFL, ask quick segments with Jaxson Dart, and then I'm gonna do because the question I've gotten after doing all these game breakdowns and deep ball series and third down is like, has your opinion changed on Jaxson Dart? And I'm gonna go through like every layer of Jaxson Dart since I've watched every play. I think I'm gonna title the podcast, I've watched every Jaxson Dart throw 7 times. And then we have our over-unders and stuff, and then we're at training camp. So really excited about it. And you know what I'm also excited about? Going to Giants, games this year. Whether that's in December or November or whenever I get to go to them, I'm excited about going to the Daytona August race. And guess how? Guess how? Because I got the best deal on these tickets from SeatGeek. Again, this is why I want to give the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. It really is. Like everyone, knows about the SeatGeek, and it's just getting them that code. And they decided, they did a little test run with Giants Nation. We're like, we know you guys, we know you. And I was like, hey, let's be family once again. And they said, let's do it. So they're in for the rest of the year. And they said, let's do it. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. The NFL schedule, came out a few weeks ago, which means football is around the corner. You have the NBA playoffs or the NBA finals, which if you're a fan of the Pacers or Thunder, I know this isn't the biggest Pacers or Thunder crowd, go to an NBA finals game. When the Nets were almost in it, a few years ago, I said, I'm going to an NBA. Like, I don't care what I have to do, how much money I have to spend, I'm going to go. And I was going to use SeatGeek. And I've used SeatGeek for every sporting, like literally every sporting event I go to. I don't even think about the other ones, sponsor or not. Whether it's, basketball games, baseball games. I hope to get some baseball games while I'm up in Jersey. So SeatGeek is the best. SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. Also, I came through for you guys. I went to SeatGeek and asked for this because a lot of people are like, oh, the code didn't work. Well, that's because I've been talking to you guys about SeatGeek for a long time. You guys have used SeatGeek for a long time. So you're not first-time buyers. So I said, let me get a new code. And they said, Bobby 2025 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. So go put it in the app right now. Like, you don't even have to buy the tickets right now. Just go put it in the app right now. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code Bobby 2025. Make sure to click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. You'll be glad you did. And here's Patricia Traina. All right, we now welcome on Patricia Traina from the Locked On Giants podcast, host of that, Sports Illustrated, Giants Country. Patricia, you are at Giants OTAs. I think all of them up until next week's mandatory minicamp. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Bobby. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you as well. I know I jumped on with you before the draft, and we did all the hypothetical, this quarterback, that quarterback. Well, now we're here, and they have Jaxson Dart, and I do want to get into some Jaxson Dart stuff. I think with the rookie QB, we should take advantage of every time we do get to see them before we start playing the games. But the thing that I took away from the notes that you guys had out, you and some of the other reporters from this OTA practice number 9, which is the third one available to the media. You're not really looking at performance too much, at least from my point of view, but looking for things that you'd be surprised by. There were some notes that Cordell Flott and Deonte Banks were alternating some first team reps, while it wasn't a load management thing where Deonte Banks was getting second team reps as well. What do you make of that? Like, do you think there's an actual court battle for that spot, or is it just them trying to keep a starting player for them the last couple of years like Cordell Flott involved?
No, I think there's a legitimate battle. I mean, look, we all know that Deonte Banks didn't have the best season last year. He's come back, and all indications and everybody we asked said that he's locked in and ready to go and asking questions and more involved and everything like that. But that said, how many years has this organization given out scholarships to top draft picks? They got to move away from that. And I think that's what they're doing here. They're saying, okay, you know what? Deonte, we're giving you the benefit of the doubt. You show you're locked in, great. You show that you're active, great. You're asking the right questions, great. But you got to go out and you got to earn it, because doing all that stuff, that's easy. Going out there and earning it, that's not as easy. So little competition never hurt anybody. And I think that's what they're doing with him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see with Deonte Banks, because they obviously traded up for him to be a number one corner. And that's all, and that's not the plan for him. But we look at draft picks, and I'm going to ask you about Evan Neal and Jalin Hyatt, and I think those are different categories of players. Where those are like, do you get anything out of those guys? Where despite not getting what they wanted out of Deonte Banks, if he can find a role as a good cornerback too, he's a player who can make money and be re-signed by the Giants, whether by this regime or another, and be a part of future success. And a reason we're happy. But I kind of agree where there was the effort stuff last year. I don't think they liked the way he reacted to some of the ways they tried to deal with it. And he may have not been as dialed in with Shane Bowen and what he was doing. But like I have not given up on Deonte Banks, but they do, like you said, he kind of needs to go out there and prove it, because he's not just going to go to cornerback 2 and all of a sudden be this great player because he's not covering wide receiver 1s anymore.
Yeah, I mean, last year, Bobby, I got the impression that Deonte just got frustrated. And when he got frustrated, he basically kind of just threw his hands up and said, okay, you know what? I'll just go out there. I'll do the best I can to survive and, let the chips fall where they may. And that's not good enough. So there's a level of maturity that I believe he has accomplished this off season. But, and then let's not forget, they brought in new coaches at that spot. They have, Jerome Henderson's not back. Mike Trier is not back. They got 2 new guys in there to be the coaches. And sometimes, sometimes we talk about a change of scenery for players. Sometimes that change of scenery could be a change in coaching, how the coach teaches, how the coach resonates with you. And I think that's what they're counting on with Deonte Banks, that this change in coaching is going to be kind of like a change in scenery, and that they're going to be able to get more out of him that they believe he can give them.
Yeah, and like I said, Deonte Banks is not this player that I've been very critical of, but I haven't given up on Deonte Banks totally as a player. And this is, I wasn't someone who was really in love with trading up for him in the first round, but like, he's extremely talented. And if he could just figure it out a little better, like, he can be a solid corner 2 in the NFL, even though he's never gonna be like a turnover machine or anything. But the listeners saying, don't bore us, let's get to the chorus. Let's talk about Jaxson Dart. Do you think Dart getting sprinkles of first team reps, and then, you tweeted out he was alternating second team reps with Jameis Winston today? Do you think that carries in over to camp when it really becomes about preparing for the season and getting closer to opponents? Do you see it being maybe early camp and then, dying out as they get closer to games and stuff? How do you think they're going to handle Dart?
Yeah, I think they're going to continue what they're doing. I mean, basically, you go back, I think it was a couple of years, Daniel Jones, when he was here, Brian Dable threw everything at him. And I believe, just watching today in particular, some of what I saw the defense doing when Jaxson Dart was in there, they were throwing everything at him to see how he reacts. That's how Dable is. We saw that on Hard Knocks, when Dable would be talking to a player and then all of a sudden, hey, read me back that play that I just gave you 5 minutes ago, just to kind of see if you're alert. But as far as reps go, I've made this point before. Assuming that Jaxson Dart sits the whole year, he's going to be quarterback 3, right? He's not getting in a game unless something happens to Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston if he's quarterback 3. So at some point, you'd like to get him some live reps. Now, it won't necessarily be right away. Maybe it's down the line, which is why I believe he's getting a lot of reps with the 2s, because maybe at some point they say, okay, you know what? We want to get him in maybe in a mop-up role, maybe, towards the end of a game, and just get him live reps, because there is no substitute for live reps. You can't simulate that in practice. So I think they're going to continue what they're doing. Maybe not as much, but ultimately, if you think about it, by this time next year, I think the plan is going to be for Jaxson Dart to be quarterback one and Jameis Winston to be quarterback two. So why not let them share the reps at quarterback two?
Yeah, absolutely. Where I think it gets a little muddy is when you start taking away reps from QB1 and Russell Wilson, which I don't think they'll do all that much. Even if they use that, even if it, miss Russell a little bit, he's not the type of guy who's gonna let that get in the way of, him doing his job. But with Jameis, like there's no time for hard feelings or this is my spot on the depth chart. Like, no, go let him split those second team reps. Because at the end of the day, Jameis is someone is what he is. He's been a pro for a long time. He can handle getting half second team reps and half third team reps for his preparation. And if he needs all his second team reps to be prepared to be the backup, then like that's just not what that job title is. Where Jaxson Dart does need all the every bit of that. So I like using Jaxson Dart a lot more. I think in the preseason games, I hope he gets the large majority of snaps. Obviously, they're going to go through their dress rehearsal in game 2, which Brian Dable has done the last couple of years. But besides that, I want to see Jaxson Dart getting all those snaps because, like you said, their plan A is to just be good and Russell Wilson to stay the starter all year. And Jaxson Dart to not play. Now, obviously, they have contingency plans for if that doesn't go the way they want. And then also, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Like, the plans can change very quickly. But plan A is for him to not play this season. So, like you said, I want to see him get as many snaps as possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance he could play. I mean, if the season goes down the tubes, maybe he comes in after the bye week.
Right.
Now, at that point, it's like, okay, Russ isn't your future, so why continue to put him out there? Especially considering Russell, I think, has incentives in his contract. So, you know, maybe you make the switch there. I don't know, but I do think in a perfect world, Jaxson Dart probably sits for the majority of the year. Look, I mean, Patrick Mahomes did it. Jordan Love sat for how many years? Other quarterbacks have done it, and it's not like people will say, well, what about the Commanders? They threw Jaden Daniels out there. Well, who did they have to put out there? They did
Yeah.
it.
And Jaden was also drafted second overall
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, exactly. So it's a little different situation. So the way the Giants set up the quarterback room, obviously they intend for Jaxson Dart to sit. Now, could that change? Sure, it can, but not until that kid is ready. Because look, you go back to Daniel Jones in 2019, and I will say this, and I will die on this hill. They rushed him out there before he was ready, and I don't think they want to make that same mistake.
Right. How did Dart look in OTA practice number 9? Obviously, it's something that gets dated, and it doesn't matter at the end, much of the end of the day. But how did Dart look in his performances, whether 7-on-7 or 11-on-11?
Yeah, a little up and down. Not as bad as last week. I thought last week he was a little more shaky, but up and down. I think a lot of what we saw that was good. Basically, what we saw is what was in the scouting report and not on his film. Like, for example, he was pretty good with the fades and the corner routes. There were times when he held the ball a little too long. There were times when he took off instead of letting something develop. And he can't throw off balance. I mean, I know that's tough for a quarterback to do, but sometimes he throws the ball off balance and you sit there and you go, because you think it's going to be picked off. So I would say it was a mixed bag for him, but I think he did more good this week than maybe last week when I just didn't think he had a sharp practice last week.
Right. All right. So I feel like because, these OTA practices, I've been doing some interviews, and I feel like I've been covering some of the same topics over and over again. So I want to hit some different ones with you. Um, Is there any chance we see an extension for a Wan'Dale Robinson or a Micah McFadden before the season starts? I feel like because the Giants have not been in the situation of extending a draft pick who's not an elite player before their contract's up since Sterling Shepard, I think, because you have obviously Thomas um, and Dexter Lawrence, but those are elite players. It's very easy to extend those guys. Like, I feel like we haven't heard anything about that. Is there any chance one of those guys gets the deal done before the season starts?
I don't think so, Bobby. I don't think they've got the money. I mean, now I know they can clear money out, but if they're going to clear money out, they're going to do it so that they have money to get through the season. I don't think they're going to extend McFadden or Wan'Dale before the season. I mean, will they maybe approach them during, the season at some point during the bye week? That's a possibility, depending on what their cap situation is, but I don't think it's going to happen that soon.
Even if it's like a deal where, they don't add any money to this year but it's just like, starting it over because they're on their last year of their deal where they started over in 2026 where they, let's say for McFadden, it was a 3-year, $22 million deal where it's just getting that deal done to get him locked up for the next 4 years, including this year.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work that way. I mean, it would be nice if it did, but if you're going to sign somebody to an extension, there's going to be a signing bonus, and that money's going to hit, that prorated portion is going to hit this year. So it doesn't quite work that way. I don't know very many agents that would say, "Oh yeah, okay, we'll start the clock next year." So
Okay. I didn't know it worked like that. I thought, the contract gets kind of added on to the contract that's already
now a lot of
there.
times there's that prorated signing bonus, and that kicks in once you sign your name on the dotted line because that's signing bonus. So if you're signing your extension now, doesn't matter if you're signing it in week 1 or week 18, it hits the current year's cap.
You don't think that they would look to clear some of that though to get those guys locked up and get them worried about getting to free agency and
It-
another year of cap going up and everything
yeah,
that
I
goes with
mean
that?
they could, but I think the big thing right now is, and I don't know what their cap situation is. Last I checked, I think they had the third fewest
Yeah,
dollars.
they have nothing right now.
Yeah. They're going to need to clear money in order to get through the summer and the regular season. Because remember, they got to pay for practice squad elevations. And then if guys get injured and they bring in new guys, or maybe they want to upgrade at the bottom of the roster. So I think that's the priority right now for Joe Shane. I don't think they're going to offer Wan'Dale and Micah contracts right now. And here's the other thing, specific to Micah, um, is Micah's role going to be reduced a little bit now that they have Abdul Carter to play a little bit inside linebacker? If that's the case, then I don't think they're going to necessarily going to want to extend him right now. I think they're going to want to see how it kind of plays out.
Yeah. I hope they use I know this is off topic with the contract, but I hope like they're not taking like first and second down snaps away from McFadden. I hope it's like third down where that's where
Yeah.
I did a segment before this interview where I talk about that clip that went viral of Carter on the field with the other two guys. That's what I want to see, the versatility of Carter is on third down,
Yeah.
and that's McFadden's biggest weakness is he's a bad covers linebacker, and Wink basically took him off the field on every third down for Isaiah Simmons. Then last year you saw him struggle in that area. Um, so that's where I hope they use Carter. I don't want to see him like playing first down regular linebacker. I want to see him going after the pass rusher and trying to stop the run.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's probably going to be the plan, I would think.
but speaking of that, how is the relationship with Kayvon Thibodeau? Because I feel like it's one that has a few layers where he's been a good player. I asked pre-draft when there was talks about like trading Kayvon if they were going to draft Abdul Carter. And I was like, I understand why some people might talk about that, but I think he's the second best player that Joe Shane had drafted up until this most recent class. We'll see how those guys produce. After Malik Neighbors, he is someone that could sign, a contract extension right now. There's been zero talk of that, despite them liking him enough to pick up his fifth-year option. And as much as I was a big fan of let's have three guys. I'm sure Kayvon is probably going to be the unhappiest of those three guys because his role is going to be diminished. Burns' role won't be diminished a ton. Carter's the new guy, so he's going to just increase in what he's doing. Where Kayvon, you can see him just not getting the snaps that he thinks he might deserve.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting dynamic to play out. I mean, right now everybody's kind of happy, kumbaya and all that stuff. But I think, Shane Bowen is looking at ways to get all three of them on the field at the same time. Now Kayvon did not practice today. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was load management. I don't know. But there have been instances, in past OTAs that we've been at where we have seen all three of them on the field. So, right now, remember, this is just about experimenting, seeing what looks good, what potentially might work, where you have to tweak. So some of what we're seeing now and what you're reading about on the tweets and the training camp or the OTA reports and stuff might not necessarily make it to summer camp. So it's going to be interesting to see what Bowen decides to keep and what he doesn't. But Kayvon, I don't think I think he's in tune with what's going on. This is a big year for him. He hasn't been horrible, but he hasn't been
the fifth overall
a lot
pick.
of people expected.
Right.
And I think he knows that. And, let's see if it motivates him. Let's see if, the addition of Carter maybe lights a fire under his rear end. And now, excuse me, now Kayvon becomes the guy that, they were hoping for.
Yeah, I think he's one of the most intriguing players on the roster right now. Because of, like he's the things that myself and you just described with him, because again, he hasn't lived up to the fifth overall pick. But he is a good player. I think he's a little underrated by the fan base, where a year ago he was probably a little overrated coming off that 11 sack season. And it's just finding that happy place. And what does that look like with a contract? Because whether you like it or not, there's just more. Because if he was produced at the same exact level, was the exact same player and hit the open market, but he was drafted in the third round, he'd get less money than the money he will get on the open market because he was drafted fifth overall. It's just that, like, that bias that we have for early draft picks. So, Kayvon's a smart guy. He's a business guy. He's not going to settle for, the first contract they throw at him either. So it's just gonna be interesting to see. Now they have 2 years to figure it out with the fifth-year option, so I don't think it's a pressing need. I don't think it's like a Darius Slayton versus Jalin Hyatt thing last year, where I was very adamant that like one of these guys is going to be very unhappy with their role, come October, and that was the exact case. Hell, it didn't even take till September for one of those guys to be extremely unhappy. Where I think like you said, you can find a place where all three of these guys are happy with their role. Hell, we've seen the Giants do it for a Super Bowl in the past, or 2 Super Bowls in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. It just takes a little creativity and everybody's just gonna not get selfish, just say, okay, all right, maybe I'm not going to be the guy on this particular play or this particular package, but I'm going to play a nice supporting role. Not everybody could be the star.
Right.
Sometimes you got to play this supporting role, and that it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, even Dexter at times has to play a supporting role. So,
right. This is my last question, because we're finishing up OTA interviews, and next time I really talk about these guys will be in training camp when I get to see them. More of a positive impact to the team this year, Evan Neal or Jalin Hyatt?
ooh, I'm going to go with Jalin Hyatt only because the Giants haven't been in pads, and I don't think it's fair to sit here and say that, oh yeah, Evan Neal has looked bad or Evan Neal has looked good. They got to put the pads on, as you know. I mean, you can't judge an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman without the pads. I will say about Jalin Hyatt, the kid looks jacked. The kid, I've heard wonderful things about his workout ethic. I mean, he's coming in on, I've heard through a couple people that he's come in on his days off. And Russell Wilson has taken a liking to him. He believes in him. And, sometimes, Bobby, if you have your quarterback believe in you, it can do wonders for your state of mind. And you could say, well, gee, maybe I'm not as bad as they think I am because my quarterback believes in me. It's just, it's always, there's always a special connection between a quarterback and one of his receivers. Right now, it looks like Jalin Hyatt has that Russell Wilson. Now, is that because Malik Neighbors hasn't played or hasn't been able to practice? Maybe. But Russell Wilson was talking about Jalin Hyatt even before they got on the field together. So he must have seen something in the kid to say, yeah, you and I we're going to do a lot of good things this year.
Well, and luckily for Jalin Hyatt, I don't say this as with any hyperbole. I think Russell Wilson is the best quarterback in the NFL for Jalin Hyatt. It is the quarterback who has consistently thrown the ball deep and done it well over the last 4 years, and that includes the Denver years. No matter how bad he was in Denver, he did do that part good. And it's sideline oriented, where Jalin Hyatt, that's kind of his, if he's a one-trick pony, that's his one trick. So it'll be interesting to see, like you said, once Neighbors comes in, he is going to be the backup, but it'll be interesting to see how they try and sprinkle him and use him more than getting 8 catches for 62 yards like they did last year, where the quarterback didn't fit his skill set at all. So we'll see. Patricia, thank you for jumping on. I know you do the Locked On podcast every day. People can go find that. I'll put the link for the channel in there, and doing stuff for Sports Illustrated. I don't have a van this year, but I hope to see you in training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. You know how to get me if you want me again.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.
All right, thanks, Patty, for jumping on again. Go give her a shout out. Thanking her for coming on Giants Nation. I hope you guys enjoy your Father's Day weekend. Hey, I know I did the ad on Tuesday, but go check out a Sussex County Miners game this weekend. They got a lot of cool things going on this weekend, and I'll just announce it. Even though this is a hey, you better listen to the end of the show announcement. We are doing another live show, August 2nd. At a Sussex County Miners game. We'll have more details as we go, but I think we're going to do some type of like giveaway for sweet tickets. Like buy your ticket, you get entered into a raffle. So we're going to do some stuff like that. We're going to have a live show there, trying to get some guests and all. But the Sussex County Miners are all in on Giants Nation, like the show and just Giants Nation as a whole. I mean, they're Giants fans themselves, so go support them. It really means a lot to them and to me if you do. That wasn't even an ad, but it was an ad. SussexCountyMiners.com. Now it's an ad. So yeah, go check out. They got all types of cool stuff for Father's Day. I think you can even throw the ball. You can not. I know for a fact that you can go on the field and throw the ball, around with your father, and kids can run the bases and stuff. So how about that? That was an ad. So again, we'll see you guys next week for a mailbag. Again, enjoy Father's Day. Wrap up mandatory mini camp, and then you have 4 or 5 weeks off, and then we're back at training camp. So I appreciate you guys very much. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, let's go Big Blue.